Rain falls incessantly over the city, turning the streets into dark, treacherous rivers. I'm sitting in my car, a middle-aged silver Corolla, watching the drops slide down the windshield. It's 3 in the morning and the streets are deserted except for a few lost souls wandering aimlessly. I'm John, an Uber driver for 5 years. I've seen everything in these early hours, but something tonight makes me uneasy. The air seems denser, charged with an energy I can't explain. The streetlights flicker, creating dancing shadows that seem to have a life of their own. My eyes roam the interior of the car, noting every familiar detail. The air freshener shaking gently in the rearview mirror, the small dent in the dashboard that I never fixed, the slightly worn passenger seat. Everything seems normal, but I feel like I'm about to embark on a journey of no return. My cell phone vibrates, breaking the silence. A new race. I hesitate for a moment, my finger hovering over the screen. The destination is an isolated area on the outskirts of the city, a place I rarely receive calls from. Something tells me to refuse, a primal instinct screaming in the back of my mind. But the need speaks louder. The bills don't pay themselves, and the nights have been increasingly empty lately. I accept the race and start the engine. The soft rumble of the car seems strangely loud in the stillness of the early morning. I adjust the rearview mirror, and for a second, I think I see something moving in the back seat. I turn quickly, but there is nothing but the familiar shadows. Streetlights pass by like ghosts as I drive through the empty streets. The rain increases, making it difficult to see beyond a few meters. My eyes constantly dart to the rearview mirror as if expecting to see something. Or someone. Every curve, every dark corner seems to hide a secret, an imminent danger that I can't identify. The GPS guides me through increasingly unfamiliar streets. The buildings are being left behind, replaced by old houses and vacant lots. Vegetation grows out of control, invading the sidewalks and creating strange shapes in the darkness. Finally, I arrive at the boarding point, a dimly lit corner. There is no one in sight. The street is deserted except for the sound of rain hitting the roof of the car. I'm about to cancel the race when a figure emerges from the shadows. The man approaches quickly, as if afraid of being followed. Mark informs the application. He gets into the car, bringing with him a blast of cold, damp air. His face is partially hidden by a hood, but I can see raindrops running down his forehead. "Good evening," I say, trying to break the ice. Mark just nods, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. His hands shake slightly as he holds a small backpack. I notice dark stains on his sleeves, which could be mud or something more sinister. I start driving, following the GPS instructions. The rain intensifies, turning the landscape into a gray blur. The silence in the car is broken only by the rhythmic sound of the windshield wipers and Mark's rapid breathing. I try to start a casual conversation asking about his destination, but Mark responds in monosyllables, his eyes constantly bouncing between the rearview mirror and the side windows. His uneasiness is palpable, filling the car with a tension that seems to electrify the air. "Can we change destiny?" Mark's voice startles me. It's the first time he's spoken since he got in the car. His voice is hoarse, as if it hasn't been used in a long time. "Of course," I reply, trying to remain calm. "Where to?" He gives me an address that's even further out of town, in an area I barely know. A region of old, abandoned farms and dirt roads. Something tells me to refuse, but the expression on Mark's face, a mix of fear and despair, makes me accept. As we move further away from the city, the road becomes darker and more winding. The trees close in on us, their gnarled branches like bony fingers reaching for the car. The asphalt gives way to a dirt road, and each pothole causes the vehicle to shake violently. The radio, which was playing softly, starts to chirp. I try to tune to another station, but all I find is static. For a moment, I think I hear voices in the interference, urgent, desperate whispers. "Leave it like that," Mark says, his voice now firmer. "I prefer silence." Suddenly, a strange noise comes from outside the car. It sounds like the sound of skidding tires, followed by a metallic impact. I brake sharply, my heart racing. The car slides in the mud for a few meters before stopping. "Did you hear that?" I ask, looking around. There's nothing on the road but us. No other vehicles, no animals, just darkness and incessant rain. Mark doesn't respond. When I turn to face him, I notice that he is pale, his eyes fixed on something beyond the window. I follow his gaze, but I see nothing but the shadows of the trees dancing in the wind. "Keep driving," he murmurs. "We're almost there." I resume my journey, but now every shadow on the road seems to hide a danger. The strange sound repeats itself a few times, always distant, like an echo of something that has already happened. Sometimes I think I see lights in the mirrors, like headlights following us, but when I look directly, there's nothing there. Mark becomes increasingly agitated. His hands don't stop moving, now gripping his backpack tightly, now drumming nervously on his knee. He mumbles words I can't understand, as if he's having a conversation with someone who isn't there. The road becomes even narrower, barely enough space for the car. Branches scratch the sides, leaving marks that look like giant nail scratches. The GPS loses signal, but Mark guides me with abrupt gestures and broken words. Finally, we arrived at the destination. It's an abandoned house, surrounded by a vacant lot. The building appears to have once been beautiful, but now it is in ruins. The windows are broken, the roof has partially collapsed. The rain has eased, but a dense fog covers the place, giving the impression that the house is floating in a sea of mist. "We're here," I announce, turning to Mark. But the back seat is empty. I get out of the car, calling out to him. There is no answer. The abandoned house seems to watch me with its broken windows, like empty sockets of a giant skull. The wind blows through the structure, producing a sound that resembles a distant groan. Hesitantly, I approach the house. Each step makes the mud suck at my shoes, as if the earth itself was trying to stop me from moving forward. As I reach the porch, I notice something on the ground, an old newspaper headline, partially covered in mud. With shaking hands, I take the paper. The ink is smudged by the rain, but I can still read the headline. "Tragic accident on Estrada Vela takes the lives of young couple." The date is 10 years ago. The photo shows a young man smiling next to a girl. My blood runs cold. The boy is Mark. I drop the newspaper and step back, tripping on the rotten porch steps. I run back to the car, my heart threatening to leap out of my chest. Upon entering the vehicle, I notice a strange smell. It's a mixture of mold, wet earth, and something metallic, like blood. With shaking hands, I start the engine. The headlights illuminate the house for a moment, and I think I see a figure in the second-story window. But when I blink, there's nothing there but darkness. I reverse quickly, wheels spinning in the mud before I find traction. As I drive away, I look in the rearview mirror one last time. For a moment, I see Mark sitting in the back seat, his face pale and his empty eyes fixed on me. When I look again, he's gone. Realization hits me like a punch. I just gave a ride to a ghost. I drive back to town in a state of shock. My mind tries to rationalize what happened, but I find no logical explanations. The images of the night replay in my head: Mark's pale face, the abandoned house, the newspaper headline. When I finally reach the center, the sky begins to lighten. The rain has stopped, but a fine mist remains, giving the city an ethereal air, as if the real world and the supernatural are mixing. I decide to stop at a gas station to compose myself. I park next to a pump and turn off the engine. The sudden silence is deafening. I close my eyes for a moment, trying to calm my rapid breathing. When I open them again, I notice something strange on the passenger seat. A small puddle of water. I touch it hesitantly, feeling the coolness of the water on my fingers. There's no way water could have gotten in there. The car was closed the entire time. I step out of the vehicle, my legs shaking slightly. The gas station attendant looks at me curiously as I fill up the tank. I probably look crazy, with my eyes wide open and my clothes wrinkled. "Rough night?" he asks, his voice startling me. I nod, unable to form words. How to explain the inexplicable? As I pay for gas, my cell phone vibrates again. Another race. My first instinct is to refuse, throw the phone away, and never drive at night again. But something stops me. Maybe it's the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, or maybe I'm searching for answers to what happened. Whatever it is, I see myself accepting the race. Minutes later, a young woman approaches the car. Claire, according to the app. She carries a large, heavy suitcase, which she places with difficulty in the trunk. I look at her in the rearview mirror. Long, dark hair, pale skin, eyes that seem to carry the weight of the world. "Good night," I say, my voice hoarse. Claire smiles, but her eyes are sad, distant. "Ever feel lost, John?" she asks, taking me by surprise. How does she know my name? I didn't introduce myself, and the app only shows my first name to passengers. "Like you're carrying a weight you can't let go of," she continues, her eyes meeting mine in the rear view. I swallow hard, remembering Mark. "Sometimes," I respond cautiously. Claire looks out the window, her reflection pale against the dark glass. The fog outside seems to thicken, isolating the car from the rest of the world. You know, there are losses that mark us forever, that tie us to places and moments. His words echo in my mind, bringing back memories I would rather forget. I remember my own loss, years ago. An accident, screams, the sound of twisting metal. I shake my head, pushing away the memories. As I'm driving, I hear a strange sound coming from the trunk. It feels like dragging, as if something is moving inside the suitcase. The sound is rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. "Your luggage," I start to say, but Claire interrupts me. "It's just the weight of the past," she says, her voice now a whisper. "We all carry something, don't we?" The sound continues, increasing my uneasiness. I try to focus on the road, but my eyes keep returning to Claire in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I think I see another figure sitting next to her. A man. When I look again, he's gone. The journey continues in silence, only broken by the occasional sound coming from the trunk and Claire's soft breathing. The city streets give way to residential neighborhoods, then to more remote areas. Ancient trees line the road, their branches tunneling above us. "Do you believe in second chances, John?" Claire suddenly asks. I hesitate before responding. "I don't know. I guess it depends on what we did with the first one." Claire laughs, the sad, melodious sound. "What if the first chance was taken from us? What if we had no choice?" Before I can respond, she points to an entrance almost hidden between the trees. "It's over there." I turn the car around, entering a dirt road. The fog intensifies, engulfing the vehicle. For a moment, I feel like I'm floating, disconnected from the real world. We arrived at our destination, an old house with peeling paint and an unkempt garden. The building seems out of time, as if it had been forgotten by the outside world. An old swing creaks on the porch, moved by a breeze I can't feel. "We're here," I announce, my voice shaking slightly. Claire gets out of the car and goes to the trunk. I also leave, offering help. "Let me help you with your suitcase," I say, moving closer. But when I get to the trunk, Claire is gone. The suitcase is there, but there is no sign of the passenger. I look around, confused. The mist seems to move with a life of its own, forming and undoing shapes that almost appear human. With shaking hands, I open the suitcase. The smell of mold and something older, almost sweet, invades my nostrils. Inside, I find only an old photograph, yellowed with age. In it, I see Claire smiling next to a man I immediately recognize. Mark. My world spins. Two lost souls, connected by tragedy, both in my car on the same night. It can't be a coincidence. Suddenly, I hear a sound coming from the house. An old song playing on a distant radio. The front door opens slowly, creaking on its rusty hinges. "Claire?" I call, my voice choked with fear. There's no response, just the sound of the music getting louder. Against all common sense, I find myself walking towards the house. Each step seems to take me deeper into a world that shouldn't exist. Upon entering, the atmosphere changes. The air grows colder, charged with an energy that makes my hair stand on end. The music comes from an old record player in the living room. The walls are covered in photographs, all showing Claire and Mark in happy times. They were so young, a voice whispers behind me. I turn around sharply. Claire is there, but different. Its shape is translucent, and I can see the walls through it. His face is sad, but there is a glimmer of hope in his eyes. What is happening? I ask, my voice barely coming out. Claire smiles sadly. You brought us back, John, back to the place where it all began and ended. Mark appears beside her, his hand intertwined with hers. We needed someone to guide us, he says, someone who could see beyond the veil. I step back, my mind struggling to process what I'm seeing. I don't understand. Why me? Because you know loss too, Claire responds. You understand what it's like to be trapped between worlds. The memories I tried to suppress for years come back with a vengeance. The accident, the car rolling over, my fiancé's face disappearing in the flames. The guilt I've carried ever since, the reason I drive at night, seeking redemption in each passenger I take safely to their destination. You're dead, I stammer, tears streaming down my face. Mark nods. 10 years ago. In this house. A gas leak, we slept and never woke up. But we can't move on, Claire adds. We are trapped, wandering between worlds, unable to find peace. Realization hits me like a wave. And I'm what? A guide? They both smile, their bodies beginning to glow with a soft light. You're a bridge, John, Mark says. Between the world of the living and the world of the dead, you helped us find our way back. Claire approaches, her ethereal form almost touching me. And now we can finally rest. Thank you, John. Their shapes begin to dissipate like smoke in the wind. The music stops, and the silence that follows is deafening. I stand, shivering, as the sun rises outside, dispelling the fog. The house around me seems older, more abandoned. The photos on the walls are covered in dust, Claire and Mark's smiling faces almost unrecognizable. I stumble out, the cool morning air bringing me back to reality. My car is there, looking strangely ordinary after the night's events. I enter the vehicle, my hands still shaking. The Uber app flashes, showing that I'm online. I hesitate for a moment, my finger hovering over the go offline button. But I don't pressure him. Because now I know there's more to my job than just getting people from one place to another. There are souls that need guidance, stories that need to be completed. I start the engine and start driving back to town. The day is just beginning, and who knows what other lost souls I will meet tonight. In the days that follow, I can't stop thinking about Mark and Claire. Their stories, their presence, the feeling of having touched something beyond human understanding, it all consumes me. Driven by an obsession that I can't explain, I begin to investigate. I spend my days visiting libraries, digging through old newspaper archives, asking older city residents. Every scrap of information I uncover is like a piece of a macabre puzzle I'm putting together. The story that gradually emerges is even more tragic than I imagined. Mark and Claire were engaged, killed in a terrible car accident 10 years ago, on the same road where I left Mark that fateful night. The driver of the other vehicle also died, a man named Albert. I discover that the house I took Claire to was her parents' house, abandoned after the tragedy. Neighbors talk in whispers about strange lights seen in the windows at night, about the sounds of old music floating in the air when no one is around. As I delve deeper into this story, strange things begin to happen around me. I hear whispers in the car when I'm alone, voices that seem to come from nowhere, arguing in urgent tones before abruptly disappearing. Sometimes I see figures in the back seat in the rearview mirror, which disappear when I look directly. My passengers also change. More and more, I catch people who seem out of place. An elderly woman who gets into the car smelling of lavender and talking about a dance that took place decades ago. A man in an old-fashioned suit who insists he needs to get to the port to catch a ship that, I later discover, sank in the 1950s. Every trip becomes a journey into the unknown. I never know if the next passenger will be an ordinary person or a lost soul seeking guidance. The line between the world of the living and the dead becomes increasingly blurred, and I find myself navigating this limbo with a mixture of fear and fascination. On a particularly busy night, I accept a run without thinking too much. The departure address is familiar. The same gas station where I picked up Claire. When I get there, the place is deserted except for a lone figure standing in the dim light. The passenger who enters is an elderly man with an old-fashioned suit and a penetrating gaze that seems to see right through me. His name on the app is simply A. "Good evening, John," he says, before I can introduce myself. His voice is deep, resonant, charged with an authority I can't explain. "My name is Albert." I feel a shiver run down my spine. The name is more than familiar. It's the name of the man who died along with Mark and Claire. "How do you know my name?" Albert smiles sadly, his eyes reflecting ancient wisdom. "I know many things, John. I know you found Mark and Claire, and I know why they came to you." My throat feels dry. The air in the car seems to grow denser, charged with an energy that makes my hair stand on end. "Why?" "Because you're a guide, John," Albert says, his voice now barely a whisper. "A conductor of lost souls." I brake sharply, stopping on the shoulder. My heart beats so loud I'm sure Albert can hear it. "What are you talking about?" Albert leans forward, his gaze fixed on me. I realize I can see through it, the streetlights shining softly through its translucent form. "There are souls who get stuck in this world, John. Souls who, for one reason or another, can't move on. They need help, someone who can see them, hear them, guide them." I swallow hard, Albert's words echoing in my mind. "And that someone is me?" He nods slowly. "You have the gift, John. The ability to see beyond the veil that separates worlds. That's why Mark and Claire appeared to you. That's why so many other souls have crossed your path." I remain silent for a moment, processing his words. Part of me wants to deny everything, say it's crazy. But another part, the part that saw Mark disappear, that heard the music in Claire's abandoned house, knows it's true. "But why me?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Albert smiles gently. "Some are chosen for this role, John. Perhaps because of their own experiences with loss, perhaps because of an innate sensitivity to the supernatural. You are not the first, nor will you be the last. The question is, are you willing to accept this responsibility?" I look at my hands on the steering wheel, shaking slightly. I think about all the lonely nights, all the strange runs. I always felt like there was something more. Something beyond what I could see or touch. And now, finally, it all makes sense. What if I don't want to? I ask, my voice cracking. What if it's too much for me? Albert sighs, his gaze becoming distant. So these souls will continue to be lost, wandering aimlessly, trapped between worlds. And you, John, you will continue to feel this emptiness, this feeling that something is missing from your life. Because this is your purpose, your calling. Deny, that would be denying a fundamental part of who you are. I close my eyes, taking a deep breath. The weight of responsibility is crushing, but at the same time I feel a strange sense of relief, as if I had finally found my place in the world. When I open my eyes, Albert is no longer there. The back seat is empty, with no sign of anyone having been there. But I feel your presence all around me, as if your words have left an indelible mark on the very air. I start the engine again, my decision made. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know that I can no longer pretend that I don't see what I see, that I don't feel what I feel. If this is my destiny, then I will embrace it with all my might. I get back on the road, my eyes alert not just to the traffic, but to the otherworldly signs that I now know are all around me. The night is still long, and there are many lost souls waiting for guidance. Albert's words echo in my mind in the days that follow. I continue driving, but now with a new purpose, a new understanding of the world around me. Each race becomes an opportunity, each passenger a mystery to be solved. I start to notice patterns in the races I accept. The passengers who show up late at night, with incomplete stories and distant looks. The air that gets thicker when they get into the car. The static on the radio that increases with their presence. I learn to recognize them, to hear them not just with my ears, but with something deeper, more intuitive. It's not easy. Each story carries a weight. Each lost soul brings with it a tragedy that sometimes threatens to drag me into the abyss. There are nights when I come home exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Nights when I question whether I made the right choice, whether I have the strength to continue. But then, there are the moments of reward, the relief in a spirit's eyes when they finally understand that they can move on. The peace that descends upon the car when a soul finds its way. In these moments, I know that I am making a difference, that I am helping in a way that few others can. My life changes in other ways too. I begin to see the world with different eyes, to notice the layers of reality that overlap our daily lives. A park is not just a place of leisure, but a meeting point for souls who are not yet ready to leave. A hospital is not just a place of healing for the living, but a portal between worlds, where the line between life and death is thinner. I learn to balance my new calling with my life in the living world. During the day, I'm John, your average Uber driver, with bills to pay and a normal life to maintain. But at night, I become something more, a guide, a bridge between worlds. I start keeping a diary, recording each meeting, each story. The pages quickly fill with names, dates, places, fragments of interrupted lives, of incomplete journeys. Sometimes I reread these stories and wonder if I'm going crazy. But then I remember the faces, the voices, the emotions I felt, and I know it's all real. Over time, I develop a kind of sixth sense. I can feel when a passenger is more than they seem, when a ride will be more than just a trip from A to B. The air thickens, the colors seem to change subtly, and an indescribable energy fills the car. One of these nights, I receive a call to a familiar place, the city hospital. When I arrive, I see a young woman waiting on the sidewalk. Her name is Marie, according to the app. She gets into the car, her eyes red from crying, her body shaking slightly. "Where are we going?" I ask softly. Marie hesitates, her voice cracking when she finally speaks. I don't know. I just need to get out of here." I nod, understanding. I start driving aimlessly, the empty early morning streets passing by in a blur. The silence in the car is heavy, charged with emotion. "I lost my son today," Marie says suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was only 5 years old." I feel my heart tighten. "I'm sorry for your loss," I say, the words seeming inadequate in the face of such pain. Marie continues, the words gushing out as if a dam has broken. "He was so scared at the end. He was holding my hand so tightly, and then he was just gone. How can I move on? How can I live in a world where he doesn't exist anymore?" It's at this moment that I realize. The air in the car changed, it became colder. In the rearview mirror, I see a small figure sitting next to Marie, a boy no more than 5 years old, looking at her with eyes full of love and concern. "Marie," I say softly, "your son, he's still here." She looks at me, confused, then scared. "What do you mean?" "He's sitting next to you," I explain gently. "He's worried about you. He doesn't want you to suffer." Marie looks to the side, her eyes wide. For a moment I think she won't believe me, but then his hands reach out, shaking, as if trying to touch something invisible. "Miguel?" she whispers, tears streaming down her face. The boy smiles, a radiant smile that lights up the entire car. He tries to touch his mother's face, his translucent fingers passing through her. "He wants you to know he's okay," I say, translating what I see and feel. That he doesn't feel pain anymore, and that you don't have to worry about him. Marie sobs, a mixture of pain and relief on her face. My baby, my little Miguel. For several minutes I serve as an intermediary between mother and son. I convey Miguel's messages of love, his desire for his mother to be happy, to continue living. Marie cries, laughs, talks to her son who she can't see, but now knows is there. Finally, I feel Miguel's presence begin to fade. He needs to go now, I say softly. But he will always be with you, Marie, always. Marie nods, tears still flowing but a gentle smile on her lips. Thank you, she whispers, to both me and her son. When I drop her off hours later, Marie looks different. There's still pain in his eyes, of course, a pain that will never completely go away. But there is also peace, acceptance, and most importantly, there is hope. This experience reminds me why I chose to accept this role, why I continue to do what I do, night after night. I can't stop death, I can't stop the pain of loss, but I can offer comfort. I can be a bridge between those who are gone and those who are left. I can help heal wounds that would otherwise remain open forever. Weeks turn into months, months into years. I keep driving, I keep driving. Each night brings new challenges, new stories. Some are sad, some are scary, some are surprisingly beautiful. On a rainy night, similar to the one where it all started, I park on a dark corner. My cell phone vibrates. A new race. I look in the rearview mirror and see a new passenger materializing in the back seat. I don't know his story yet. I don't know what tragedy keeps him trapped in this world, but I know I'm here to help. Good evening, I say, my voice steady despite the chill running down my spine. Where are we going? The passenger smiles sadly, his eyes reflecting an old pain. Home, he replies. Finally, home. I start the engine and start driving. The rain falls outside, washing the city streets. And I, John, continue my journey as a guide for lost souls, taking them to their last race. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know how many more lost souls I will meet, how many more stories I will hear. But I know that as long as there are souls in need of guidance, as long as there are unfinished stories and broken hearts in need of healing, I will be here. Driving through the city streets, navigating between worlds, always ready for another race. Because in the end, aren't we all passengers on this great journey of life? And sometimes, all we need is someone to show us the way back home.